So now we move from the most ancient dynasties to the Han Dynasty, which lasted for about 400 years, an important dynasty of longevity and significance. And during those about 400 years, its capital moved. So we can speak of the Western Han and the Eastern Han based on which capital. It straddles, notice this, from before the Common Era to the Common Era. So we're turning the millennium with the turn of dynasties, the Han Dynasty turning that time period. Interestingly, we will see that the Han Dynasty represents a transition in art. A great deal of the art is still focused on the tomb, as in this banner that we look at, also this incense burner, also this stone carving, all for tombs, ancestors, and remembering. But we will actually see that the art is also engaging more and more with the culture of the court. And we see it a little bit in this artwork. And that is where art will be heading in China as the centuries go by. The Han Dynasty was a major world power, comparable to ancient Rome. So I'm juxtaposing here the Romans, a fresco painting by a Roman artist showing Roman women with their Flavian amphitheater, to show you that in comparison to the architecture as it would have looked like in the Han period. This is actually a ceramic model of wooden architecture. The ceramic model was made for a tomb, so we don't have any remaining architecture. This is made out of stone, lasts a long time. But we do have this very interesting stone relief carving that tells us a lot about Han Dynasty culture. So both of these powers were at their peak roughly in the same years. And Han China might have been actually bigger in population, in geographic extent, in wealth, in military might, and prestige. They are roughly, though, pretty comparable. In terms of culture, what was especially important about the Han Dynasty was the establishment of Confucianism, Confucius thought and behavior, as the basis for attaining a position in the imperial bureaucracy. So in other words, to become part of the ruling system, you had to demonstrate your knowledge of Confucius and the way in which you exemplify the Zhenzi that Confucius describes. And that would be the way that the imperial system would run for the next 1,000+ years until the 20th century. And again, this very interesting stone relief from a family shrine, we can look at it as a memorial to the dead as part of tomb culture. But if we look closely, we also see Confucianist ceremonies. Look at the decorum and the elegance of the courtly figures coming and bowing before the emperor. Look at the decorum and elegance of people in their marvelous chariots with these amazing horses prancing along. This is about the etiquette and elegance of court culture. So we can look at this exquisite, stunningly delicate, luminescent bee disc with dragons, and we could see it again as part of tomb culture, but we could also reference the writings of a Han scholar from around this time who's talking about jade and linking the properties of jade to the ideals of a noble character that Confucius lays out, the Zhenzi. And here there's a kind of systematic analysis of why jade is beautiful. And it's beautiful not just because, wow, that's a gorgeous color, but because it has virtues. It has it's a moral exemplar of what it is to have a virtuous character. It has charity because it has a luster, bright yet warm, that is a metaphor for a person with a charitable outlook. Rectitude, moral uprightness, is communicated by its translucency, revealing the colors and markings within. Wisdom, by the purity and penetrating quality of its note when the stone is struck. Of course, it's not literally stone, but when the material is struck. Courage in that it may be broken but cannot be bent. Equity in that it has sharp angles yet injures none. So look at the mindset of a Han scholar who's looking at art and finding in it a display of Confucius's thought, the ideals that are part of the imperial system now that is based on Confucianism. One of the most important objects surviving from the Han Dynasty is incredibly important, partly because it is one of our earliest examples of Chinese painting. And painting over the upcoming centuries will become the most prestigious art form. And so we see the very beginnings of what will be called the arts of the brush. Brushwork as an art form that deals with flow and energy. We see it in this silk banner and in the lacquered coffin that contained the corpse. You'll be learning about the deceased woman and her coffin in detail in some readings that you'll be doing. But for now, I just want you to realize that this is made of lacquered wood, and it has this use of brushwork, these lighter colored sort of blush, pinkish, rosish colored brushwork to create fantastic animals, if you can see them, and swirling strokes. You can see that the brushwork is like speed marks, and it helps the animals really seem like they're gliding. I don't know, they almost look like they're roller skating or something. They seem to move so quickly, and they are so animated. This idea of brushwork as a quickening and an animating is going to be incredibly important in Chinese painting. So when you get to learn more about this, you'll get into more depth about how this banner is divided to show us the sky or heaven realm, the earth realm, and the underworld, and how we see the deceased woman with the ritual vessels for her. We see mythical figures, and we also see the bee disc, which is a kind of beautiful passageway, an opening from one world to the other. And so that idea of a passage from one world to another, in a way, that's how I think of the Han Dynasty, because it's still connected to the world of death and the afterlife that was the center of art production, but it's looking ahead to a different art world that is going to emerge and that is going to be focused more on the court and very much on painting. At the same time, the Han Dynasty is also superlatively economically powerful, with silk and ceramics being traded often with the Roman Empire. The Roman population was so covetous of silk that they actually got the government worried that all these people buying silk were going to bankrupt the Roman Empire. So the empire tried to restrict silk imports. So China has this tremendous economic power, and then it also is establishing colonies at this time in Korea, and will have a kind of a dominant relationship to Korea, so that it's both politically and territorially and economically very strong. And it's setting in motion cultural patterns that will play out for centuries.